Hi team, Neil Grun here, Chief Experience Officer at the Bolt. Just jumping on to this training just to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour how to dictate NDIS compliance session notes. So without further ado, we will jump in. Just a quick one though, actually. Throughout this, I will be providing you with a few tidbits. So we basically will be doing a quiz at the end of this. So you'll need to watch the whole thing and then answer the quiz. We're looking for 100%. So there'll be a quiz that you can access that you submit the results to Casey. And then he will approve that. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to dictate notes in accordance with the way that we want them done. So crack it on. Introducing our client, David. I'm going to give examples of how to dictate notes throughout this. So David is a figment of my imagination. I made him up, but you can read his details there. So just introducing David as a start. So why are we dictating notes? Saves time. Time is of the essence. Great source of stress for support workers. So we've heard you. We're doing something about it. Real time. You complete your notes on the day. We all know those are the best kind of notes. They're the most relevant. They remember you are able to remember what to put into it. Supports accessibility. So not everybody is comfortable writing streams of notes. Not everyone's comfortable typing. So dictation might be an option for some. Integrates with AI, which is obviously the future, and same day completion. So as per the Bolt processes, all case notes are to be completed on the day of the community support or on the final day, or submitted on the final day of the respite or extended support hours. There's 5 basic sections to a Bolt case note. I've called them the secret herbs and spices. There's the session basics, which every note must start in the same way. AI does a lot of that for us, but as long as you put the information into the dictation, AI can then order that correctly. It's probably important to say if you don't put information into the dictation, the AI will make assumptions. So dictating notes is still incredibly important to provide the richness and the context so that the AI doesn't assume. Client presentation is the second one. We've spoken about that a lot and we'll continue to do that. It's important that we consistently talk about the client presentation, session summary, what you do during your shift, the functional capacity and executive functioning observations. So this is, what I've put there, the smart stuff, but it's what we fund, what the NDIS fund on. So if we can write great notes that speak to somebody's functional capacity or executive functioning, we'll be doing a great job. And then feedback and or recommendations. So feedback to support workers, your colleagues, recommendations for future support, or feedback to externals like support coordinators. So yeah, those are the 5 key sections of a Bolt case note. So the basics, the why. We're all throughout this, we're going to do why, what, and how. So why do we do something? What is included in that? And then how do we do it? So the why of the basics is we basically do it because we've got to be accurate when it comes to NDIS billing and documentation. We get audited. We need to make sure we're on point. Shows how we're using our time, what we're doing with our clients. It's great practice. It's brilliant practice to basically be able to share this information, ensure that we're delivering as per the plan, both our plan and the NDIS plan, and it's good governance. We need to ensure that what you're delivering, we're billing for, and we're not making mistakes, i.e. billing for more than we've delivered, because we need to be fair and equitable to clients. So that's why we start with the basics. And what are the basics? The basics are simply the client initials, your initials, date and time of the session, face-to-face hours, non-face-to-face hours, the travel, labour. So labour is always your time, your labour. Travel, non-labour is your kilometres. So travel is to an appointment or to collect someone. You never charge travel on the way home um, from your last appointment of the day. Transport is your kilometres during the session, and then the client's primary diagnosis. So with David, it was MS. Sorry, no, it wasn't. It was schizophrenia. So yeah, those are the basics. And now, simply the how. I'll show you how to do it. So what I'm going to do is this session is for client DN, David Niven, and the support worker is NG Neil Grun. The date of the session was the 1st of June 2025. The start time, was 9 a.m. and the finish time was 4 p.m. Face-to-face support, 7 hours. Non-face-to-face time, 30 minutes. Labour travel, 30 minutes. Non-labour travel, 12 kilometres. Transport, 8 kilometres. Primary diagnosis, schizophrenia. And that's how you do it. That's the first section of the case note. So when you're doing a community support, that's what you would start with. When you're doing a ESH or a respite, again, that's what you would start with, noting that you don't need to do that every single day. You can do that at the beginning, at the end, because obviously you won't have all of that information. Just as long as you get the information into the note, AI will sort it out for you. So that's the basics. Second, client presentation. Why do we talk about client presentation? It establishes a baseline for daily support. So it's basically talking about physical, emotional, cognitive states. It means that you guys can tailor your support. So if you're noticing if somebody's fatigued, then you're not going to go and do the 10-kilometer hike that you plan to do. You might iterate and change. So the client presentation, when you talk about that, it establishes that baseline for the day. In addition, it should improving, declining. So if the client over time or within the session, they might present tired at the beginning of the session, but then invigorated at the end. It might be that over the course of 6 months, we see a theme in the client presentation that they were in a great place and now they're in a not so much great place. So it would basically identify themes and trends in that regard. And obviously it also talks about potential triggers or stressors. That's basically from the beginning and throughout the sessions. So they might present well to start with, but then something triggers them throughout the session, and then basically that tails off and they're not presenting well. So being able to establish that baseline and track their presentation across the session is vitally important. Secondly, it demonstrates responsiveness and duty of care. So you've highlighted the presentation, but now you're talking about how you've responded to that. So what we know is that people can be quick to change their presentation. You've identified the change of presentation. Now, what this is basically telling us is how you have responded to that. And also, obviously, we talk a lot about duty of care. This is what that is. So tracks functional and emotional patterns over time. I kind of alluded to this in the first slide on this section, but what we're talking about here is that if we have 6 months worth of case notes in front of us that we might be able to review, I'd say as part of a plan review or as a part of a piece of work with a support coordinator, we would be able to say in 6 months' time how somebody's improved. So their presentation may have always been late, they may have always been unkempt. But what we've noticed in the last 6-12 months is the fact that they actually have improved. So they might be shopping independently, they might be doing those things. Or they might be deteriorating. So Case notes, the why that we talk about client presentation is basically to track the client's overall presentation. Obviously, other things around sleep hygiene, personal care habits, and coping mechanisms, or in an STA, it might be around how the STA has or the ESH has positively or negatively impacted their well-being. Next one, supports evidence for progress and NDIS reporting. So where the bolt is exceptional is we provide feedback to our support coordinators. You know, we do that. The NDIS is designed to support people to work towards goals. Now, you might not be able to do that in every session, but you would hope over the course of time that you could do that. You could support a client to work towards their goals. So the cumulative of our notes over a period of time will ultimately provide a narrative for us to share with the support coordinator that will provide supporting evidence for progress or deterioration. Obviously, we're looking for the former, but ultimately that will inform any NDIS reviews, any reports that need to be put in place. So really important, really, really important for the continued funding for clients. So we talk about duty of care quite a lot, but case notes are vitally important as a whole, but the client presentation is equally, as a component part of it, is very important because it protects the client and it protects you. Nothing exists outside of a case note. So if something happens in a session and if not included in a case note, I've always said this, is it hasn't happened, because that is your supporting evidence as to what happened in that session. So if somebody was inappropriate, if somebody had a fall, if somebody did something, or you felt unsafe and it wasn't in the case note, ultimately it hasn't happened. It has, but when it comes to reviewing that, it's not there. So your case note is the evidence of what has happened. So it protects you, protects the client, and ultimately it protects the bolt as well. So if a client accuses us of something, the fact is, and you've written a light case note that isn't very descriptive, then we don't have supporting evidence to, push back on the client or defend you against that. If, however, you basically wrote that the client was presentation, they were drug affected, or they were psychotic, or they were manic, or whatever, and you provided detail, that would provide evidence that potentially the client didn't know what was going on, that they were not presenting well throughout that day. So this is one of the most important ones, protects you, but also protects the client as well. So should we be included in the client presentation dictation? Mood and emotional state. So don't really need to talk too much about that. Whilst I'm talking, just look at the examples up there. They're very simple, but yeah, it's really important that we basically state, how the client presented within their mood, but also their emotional state at the start and throughout every single client session. Energy levels and physical state. Obviously, we support a lot of people with MS. We support a lot of people with chronic pain. We also support people that, experience fatigue. So it's really, really important to note how a client presented with their energy levels. Grooming and personal care. This is something you won't talk to the client about, but it's an observation. Lots of our clients struggle with self-care. Self-care is a domain within the functional capacity sections of the NDIS, and the evidence required. So if people are struggling to brush their hair, put on socks, even have a shower, shave, whatever it might be, those are signs of whether or not someone is traveling well or not traveling well. So it's really, really important that we dictate how people are presenting in regards to their appearance, but also their personal care. Cognitive and executive functioning, we've spoken about this quite a lot. This matters a lot with people with ASD, but it will, executive functioning is impacted by fatigue. So, how often were you reminding them? Were they confused? Were they able to complete tasks? Did they remember that you were turning up? Did they remember that you were going to an appointment? Were they remembering things? Those are really, really important to remember, because that basically will provide an insight as to the client's cognitive and executive functioning. Behaviour observations. This is kind of linked, I guess, to protecting the client and yourself. Any concerning or notable behaviours, we're very lucky that the services we provide, majority of our clients are don't present with behaviours of concern, but we do have instances whereby people are problematic when it comes to their behaviours. But also as well, you can think about this in regards to, they talk loudly in a public setting. So it doesn't need to be extreme behaviours. It can be low-level behaviours that impact or have an impact on their ability to operate within the community. So remembering with the client presentation and the behavioural observations when you're dictating, don't always think about this as the big, violence, aggression. Think about it as volume. Think about it as, politeness within the community, those kind of things as well. So final thing is how do we do that? So again, picking up the phone, what we do is we basically just go, start of the session, David answered the door with a flat effect, minimal eye contact and reported hearing voices since 5 a.m. due to his diagnosis of schizophrenia. Midway through the session, I supported David to take his medication. After this, he became more animated, laughing and joking, and initiated conversations on a few of his favourite topics. He seemed to be in a better mood. At the end of the session, fatigue was evident, speech was slowed, and he requested a quiet space. His mood was stable, no escalation. His grooming remained relatively neat, his behaviour appropriate. His request for a quiet space may be linked to his overstimulation. So that's all you need to do in regards to the client presentation, remembering that its presentation is fluid. So the fact is you would do it beginning, middle and end, or at any appropriate junctures throughout a community session. You might just provide it in a commentary when it on ESH or STA. So client awoke in a pleasant mood, but sleepy throughout the day. They did X, those kind of things. And then towards the end of the day in a reflection. So as long as you're kind of getting the fluctuations of presentation, that's okay. But the easiest way to think about that is beginning, middle and end. Section 3, session summary. So why do we provide a session summary? Super simple, really. Demonstrate supports of what we were delivered. I'm not going to focus and remain on that one. That basically speaks for itself. There's an example down there, obviously in the bottom. Again, very simple. Probably the easiest section of describing what we do. Second, it provides a narrative. It builds the real world picture. So if somebody's reading your notes, you were there, you were living it, you know what you did. But if somebody was reading this, they would understand and visualize, or could visualize, what it is you did with the client. Links activities to functional goals. So this is really, really important in regards to the NDIS. Lots of providers don't do this effectively, but if somebody makes themselves a cup of tea, if somebody cooks themselves breakfast, that's actually a functional capacity. or a functional domain. They're able to manage, they're able to cook, they're able to do those things. If they are learning to cook, it shows their skill development. So when you're talking about activities, it's important to basically say we did X, i.e., we went for a walk, but ultimately linking that to the functional capacity. So we went for a walk, which supported their mobility, which is a key goal for them because of their diagnosis of MS. Or in regards to David, it might be that quiet spaces. We sat quietly reading a book because he wants to build that into his day because it supports his mental health. So linking activities to functional goals, it's not enough just to state the activity. To provide, AAA rated A plus notes, you will link the activities to the functional goals. Supports evidence of progress or barriers. Again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but we used to have a client that would only sit in the back of the car because they were incredibly nervous. So they would get in the car at the beginning of a session, sit there quietly, and we would basically provide a taxi service to that activity that they were doing. Over the course of time, they then started to sit in the front of the car. So basically, we are saying, that they are there, they're building rapport, they're building comfortableness with us, and they feel safe within our space to be able to, sit with us and not sit in the back. So that's a really simple example, but you might, from a community perspective, you might have more intel across a period. So you might have been providing intermittent support for someone for 6 months, so you can recall what they did, what support you were providing to them 6 months ago. But within an STA or ESH, which is a confined period, it might be that you notice someone, is incredibly fatigued when they come away. They feel overwhelmed, they feel overloaded, but throughout the course of the stay, they calm, they relax, they reset, and then they basically are able to then do more. So that's kind of where you would provide the evidence with that. Or if you do know them historically, then you can speak to that as well. Would come away, previous clients would come away, a one in mind would come away, huge social anxiety, would require so much support before coming away, but now just comes away as part of a group and is the life and soul of that group. So you can comment on that if you know that. Protects providers and documents critical incidents. So again, like the previous talking about protecting ourselves, if an incident happens or something happens within a session and you don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. So if they were inappropriate to you, if they bumped into somebody in the community, if this or that happened, you've got to talk about it. So if it didn't happen within your notes, it doesn't exist. So vitally important that if anything comes up during the course of your support, be it in community, ESH or STA, the fact is you will talk about that. Drug use, alcohol use, violent behaviour, being rude to people, a fool, whatever it might be, you need to talk about it. The what. So what do we say? What do we say when we're talking about the session summary? We talk about the main activities and routines. So this is an important one as well. So activities are quite easy. We went to the cafe, we shared a coffee, we had lunch. But what are the routines? Is this a regular thing that we do? Was there anything that shifted? How were they able to manage that shift within that? If it's a self-care exercise, or taking medication or whatever, is that part of a normal routine? So really important to talk about the activities, but also if they're embedded within routines. So what else do you say is the support provided? The activities are one thing, that's this side of it, and then you've got the support provided. So community access, providing support in social situations, providing coaching, providing briefing, debriefing, those kind of things, ensuring that you were able to involve somebody in conversation, that you were able to redirect them or help them understand something differently. That is support. There's an activity you did, we went to the cafe, but what was the support that you provided within that? We do regular supports on a Sunday, whereby it's actually great for that person to sit in a cafe, have a coffee, read the paper, discuss. It's normal. It's access to the community. Would they do that on their own? Potentially not. So the support, we're providing the activity, but we're also providing the support within the activity. Choice and control. You should all know about that. We're talking about, what did the client want to do? What did they choose or initiate? Independence, leadership. Did they struggle to make decisions? So, we work with people that you might ask what they want to do, and they say, I don't know. But then the fact is, you provide them a list of things to do, and they may respond differently. So, lots of our clients, due to their executive functioning, feel overwhelmed. So you might talk about that, you provided them a very open-ended question, which was like, do you want to go out? And they said, no, I don't know. And then you sharpened that to say, do you want to go out to do X, this activity? And they went, oh yeah, that would be lovely, that would be great. So what you're showing there is basically that, they are struggling to make decisions, but you're tailoring your support to actually help them make decisions. Also, as well, independence and leadership. So in an STA setting, people might want to be independent. So you might talk to them, dictate about, they showed independent living skills, or they showed independence in the community, whatever it might be. Did they drive the activities? Did they show leadership? Did they say, have confidence in saying, no, I would like to do this today? So yeah, all of those things, is client initiatives and decisions, really important to talk about. Social engagement, you guys do very well at this already. Did the client interact with others? Did they have nervousness? Those kind of things. But also, as well, it's about what you don't hear with this. It's what you see. So lots of our clients will excuse themselves from sessions because they're overwhelmed. They may take a break. They may wander off for a short while, obviously within sight. Those are the things that you need to understand and see, especially those presenting with anxiety or any kind of diagnoses that gives them overwhelm. Those are the things that you need to speak about. Again, client that we have regularly, that some of you will know, when they're overstimulated, they will walk ahead of you. So that's a good thing to talk about, is that the client presented as overstimulated because they surged ahead and walked independently for a period of time. In that time, that your job is to just provide them space to regulate, and that's what you're doing. That's the support you're providing. So the social engagement there was that they pulled away to regulate. So lots and lots of examples that you can talk about it when you dictate. Barriers, adjustments, or challenges. Did anything affect participation? So linking back to what we were talking earlier about MS, fatigue, anxiety, those kind of things. So the client had a willingness to engage in the session, but due to these issues, they didn't, or the session had to be cut short, or the session went longer, or we decided to do something else. We iterated. We went initially to do a loop of the lake, but we only ended up only walking a short distance because they felt fatigued. So again, really important that you're talking about the activity in detail, and you're providing the richness to that. So how do you do that? This is for David again. So again, you pick up your phone. 9:15 a.m. I supported David to prepare breakfast, provided step-by-step prompts for food safety and portion size. 10:30 a.m. I accompanied David on a local walk for exercise and sensory regulation. Used gentle redirection when his auditory hallucinations increased. I noticed this as he has a tendency to rub his head when experiencing these. Later in the session at 12 noon, at David's request, we visited the community garden. He watered plants independently. I observed and praised his initiative, reinforcing his goal of an increased community participation. 2 p.m. completed weekly budget review. David entered figures into his spending tracker with verbal cues only, demonstrating improved self-management. Towards the end of the session at 3:45, we facilitated a medication checklist and prepared visual schedule for the evening. David signed off the list without hesitation. So I'm reading that because I've got a prompt, because I'm training you. What you need to be aware of is that yours will not be as concise as that. When I dictate notes, they are nowhere near as concise as that. You can waffle. It's completely fine for you to waffle as long as you are using the cheat sheet that we're going to provide you to try and stay. If you waffle a bit, try and come back and be focused. So please don't take what I'm saying here as the gold standard, which it is, but you don't have to do that because it's pretty impossible to do it. I'm just using a script and providing you with the how to do it. You will waffle. Section 4, engagement and functional capacity. FC means functional capacity. Why do we talk about this? Demonstrates skill development, capacity building, NDIS relevance. Like I said, and I say, ad nauseum, functional capacity is how the NDIS make decisions. So it's really, really important that we are experts in how we talk about functional capacity, and that it is, and executive functioning, and that it is weaved throughout all of our notes, ensuring that we can be seen to be aligning to, the NDIS and its purpose. So what do we say when we're talking about functional capacity? In the session. So what is functional capacity? Probably the easiest way is just to show here is planning and organisation. So simple things like they remembered the session was on, that they're organised to go out, or did you have to wait for them? Social engagement and communication. Did they do well? Did they pull back? Did they, were they, forward when talking to people? Were they quiet? Were they loud? Were they appropriate? The self-care, those kind of things, emotional regulation, pacing. Sometimes we've spoken to you guys, Casey, when I spoke to him, his pacing was well off when with clients. So he changed that by being able to notice that a client was fatigued. So he was able to kind of adjust the way that he worked because he became aware of their functional capacity. So, by using, by observing a client, by you studying them, not in a weird way that would make them feel uncomfortable, but by studying them, you will ultimately be able to talk about functional capacity very well. Even if you don't know the headings, just by virtue of studying someone, it probably would mean that you are, if you notice anything, it would fall within a functional domain. What supports were required to enable this? It's kind of a little bit repetitive, so I won't stay too long. But did you provide prompts? Did they self-initiate or need encouragement? Lots of our clients, will lose track of things. They might have disorganized cupboards. They might forget something without writing a list. Did you need to write a list with them at the beginning of the session so that they could tick things off as you go? What do we talk about? We talk about the fact that a client is now more capable of cleaning. They initiate certain tasks, whereas before they didn't. They understand how to do things. They're evidencing that they are, um, independent in some ways. Um, Barriers and strengths. So, did the client struggle in a particular area? Did they overcome a previous challenge? Are they deteriorating? Somebody's mental health can deteriorate, which ultimately has an impact on their functional capacity. So, that's what we would talk about when we're talking about functional capacity and talking about those areas. So, what I would say is if you are doing well in the session summary and you are doing well in the um, brain fade client presentation, excuse me, um, you don't need to talk about functional capacity and engagement separately. So if you do sections 1, 2, and 3 well and weave in functional capacity observations, then the fact is you will not need to dictate a separate section. AI will take your notes from sections 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll basically draw them out to write a section on engagement and functional capacity. So that's good news. The summation of presenting issues is an important section of STA and respite. It basically obviously pulls everything together into a concise bullet points without having to read the whole thing. So, why does the summation need doing? Again, same things as we've spoken about before: patterns over time, observations to functional capacity, justifies funding, it protects providers, explains why. What happened, why it happened, those kind of things. Um, it's a summation. It's a closing paragraph. It's a if you it's the foreword. It's the description of a book. On the back cover, that's got a name to it, but it's that. So if we wanted to learn anything about that stay or that session, that stay or that ESH, then that's basically where we would look. Again, if you do sections 1, 2, and 3 well, then the fact is you won't need to do this. So this will basically, the AI will do it for you. I should note that you need to do a section. The ESH and STA need to be done daily. So you're not writing one, or you're not dictating one note for the whole day. You're dictating it in the same way you write it, as in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and then the summary will be provided at the end of that. So we don't do summaries within community sessions. We just do summaries within STA and ESH. But to reiterate, they are literally just the AI does it for you if you are able to complete successfully section 1, 2, and 3. Finally, feedback to the SC. You've all started to get your emails that Casey sends through. So you're already seeing, if anybody's new, you will see this in time. You're already seeing the feedback sections that we are sending to the support coordinators. Again, I'm not going to go too much into this because it replicates what I've already told you. But why do we do that? It ensures continuity of care. So if something happens in respite, we are able to share that with the support coordinator, and then they're able to, potentially put things in place with existing supports or those kind of things. So continuity basically just means joined up. So we are joining our service up to others and wrapping around the client to ensure that they have the best possible care. Goal alignment. So again, what I've said before within this presentation, the NDIS is about people achieving goals. The reason why people are funded for STA or any support is so they can work towards those goals. So why are we providing feedback to the SC? Because it states and clearly articulates that the work that we are doing aligns to the participants' goals. Demonstrates value for money. This is a key component of the NDIS. It's an insurance scheme. Value can be made in many ways. So what we're doing is basically, getting them into the community. We're doing meaningful activities. We're providing them supports that are representative of their disability, that are value for money. We're doing what we say we're going to do. Again, the other thing is about the compliance element. So you'll see from the feedback that we talk about, the 5 reasons for STA, the 7 reasons for funding, those kind of things. So it just clearly demonstrates our effectiveness to meet the requirements within the NDIS. That's a replica, that slide, so we'll go on one more. Supports plan reviews, again, we mentioned this earlier, but the work that we do can then be presented to a planner to say this was the positive impact that STA had for the client, and therefore might influence a planner to fund more, or to kind of say, they can have exactly the same again. If we don't provide feedback, in the same way that if we don't write case notes, it doesn't exist. Like the planner doesn't know the positive impact that we've had, or STA has had for that client. Flags risks or changes in support needs. So this links to the first slide in this section around continuity of care. So if you've identified a risk, or something that you don't think lines up, we provide that feedback to the coordinator. Lots of you have already flagged things for me in the past that have basically said, can you please follow up the support coordinator because of this, and this. This is why we do this, is that good care is not necessarily about responding directly to the client or doing something about it. Good care is about ensuring that information is passed on to somebody that basically can do something about it. So if a risk has been flagged or something's come up, that we can then flag that with the support coordinator who has an ongoing duty of care to that client. And then finally on this one, it builds the Bolt's reputation as an excellent provider. Nobody else in the sector will be providing comprehensive feedback to support coordinators. So this is a good reason to do it. It's not the primary reason to do it, but if you are a support coordinator and you're getting detailed feedback from a respite provider, you're going to think to yourself, wow, these guys are on it. They know exactly what they're doing. And the fact is that I'm really appreciative of this transparency that they provide because it makes my life easier. So by virtue of us providing feedback, that will build the reputation of the Bolt. More good news. You basically won't need to write this section. The AI will do this for you. But again, broken record, if you get section 1, section 2, section 3 right and on point, AI will do the rest. You need to basically make sure that those sections are comprehensive, that you're giving the information that's required for then AI to use that to then write the feedback to the support coordinator. Finally, feedback to the next support coordinator. Pretty much the same reason as to why we provide feedback to the support coordinator. Feedback to the next support worker versus support coordinator. So this would be at the end of a respite or at the end of an ESH or the end of a community session, whereby the person reading that note next would basically go, oh, okay, Neil says, this would be good to carry on doing. So you're walking into a shift knowing what's happening for that client. You'll know what work is potentially required to do those kind of things. So what's been working well, what hasn't been working well. So again, provides continuity of care. It provides connection from worker A to worker B. So that's why we provide feedback to the next support worker. Reduces participant anxiety and builds trust. This is absolutely imperative. Lots of providers, poor providers, will communicate through a client. So somebody will finish their shift, will tell something to the client, who then got to tell the next worker. That's incredibly inappropriate, and the Bolt doesn't do that. We provide comprehensive case notes from one worker to the next worker, and that's the handover. So we don't have to communicate through the client, because that basically and then creates stress for the client. But what it does for us, it builds trust. The client is noticing that we're not needing to ask their advice, that we're actually talking to each other to wrap around them and provide the best possible support. Supports safety, risk management, and duty of care. Again, I've spoken to you about this the whole way through. Passing on risk-related behaviour to the next person, passing on a concern, passing on something that worked well, or whatever it might have been, is really, really important. So it's not like you're starting every shift, every session, every ESH without any information. You are being provided advice by the previous support worker. Enhances outcomes. Again, this relates back to what I've spoken about previously before. If you know what works well, if something's tried that's new, or that they provide a piece of feedback, or that you did something slower or in a different way than you did it before, you have that intelligence to go in and do that. We're not learning in every session. We only need to learn once and then pass that around the team. So we are individuals, but we work collectively as a team. So by providing feedback to the next support worker, we can enhance our clients' outcomes. Professionalism and reflective practice, it goes back to what I said earlier. So if we provide feedback to the next support worker, we're not having to ask the client. So many times, when we do it well, clients go to me, how do you know that? And it's like, we talk to each other. So it's a really good thing when clients know that we're talking to each other and we're working together to support them. It's also really great for reflective practice. You all have support from Rachel, but reflective practice is a great tool to be able to kind of look back and kind of go, well, what worked well, what didn't work well, and continue to get better when supporting that client. Protects the Bolt's reputation and legal compliance. I won't go into this again. We've spoken about it, but if we're not providing advice to the next person, and somebody walks into a session without knowing something, that could potentially go wrong. So always protecting the reputation, always protecting compliance, those kind of things. A couple of duplications in here. That's a bit, protects that. And then the final slide is, again, good news. You don't need to do this. The AI will do it for you. But broken record, sections 1, 2, and 3 need to be completed well. Okay. So what I'm just going to quickly do, I'm going to go back through, and I'm just going to quickly talk to you again about slides 1, 2, and 3, because we've got to the end of this, and those are the sections you have to fill out. Basic client details, client initials, your initials, the client presentation, which is this, and then we then have the session summary. So what we've got is the basic information, the client presentation, and the session summary. You will all be provided a cheat sheet. You can waffle. Talking more is better than talking less. Let's work to watch this presentation a couple of times, or you don't need to watch it. You can just look at the slides, just get into a rhythm with dictating your case notes, and then basically checking your case notes as well after they've come out of AI. We're not quite there yet as of June 2025, but first and foremost is the dictation. Remember, section 1, section 2, and section 3. If you do it well, AI will do the rest for you. Remember, there's a quiz, 10 questions. You will have that in the file. Submit your answers to Casey, and he will mark that. When you get 10 out of 10, you will be given the green light to dictate notes. You don't have to dictate notes. You can write them if you want. It's your choice. But this is the option once you've passed the quiz. All right, guys, thanks for listening. Hopefully it wasn't too boring and monotonous. I did it as quickly as I possibly can. Casey and I are around if you have any questions. Go well. Bye-bye.